Hello, everyone, and welcome to our latest Balance Fireside chat. And since we're talking balance, we're going to have to be joined by the Balance team. My name is John. I am the community lead here at Relic. So let's introduce the team real quick. Let's start with Jason
Hello, I'm Jason. I'm a designer that works on Code Heroes 3.
and Darren.
Hey, my name's Darren Chan, and I'm also one of the designers working on Company of Heroes 3.
Okay, amazing. So the 225 balance tuning update is going to be going out momentarily if it hasn't already. The patch notes are also up and live, so you can find those on Steam. There should be links on our social accounts and Discord, so you can find those. But you can just also go to the Steam Community Hub and store page and pull those up as well. But we're going to be looking at those today as we go through some of the changes that the team has made in this update. So before we kind of get into it, Jason, usually these like 0.5 updates are a bit of cleanup after a major update. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so our 0.5 patches usually have two or so goals. One is to tighten up the balance of the game after the major patch has gone out and after we've had enough time for the dust to settle. And then the changes are kind of to even out some of the biggest pain points that are feasible to fix in a 0.5. And then the other is we want to introduce a few changes for things that we might have missed in the major patch, or like certain units that got pushed out in ways that we didn't really expect to have happen, and bring them back in.
Okay, amazing. So again, you can find links to everything on our social channels at Company of Heroes. You can find the patch notes and check out where to get those and read along. So I think let's change scenes here and pull up these patch notes. So I guess we can just kind of start going through and touch on some of the things that the team wants to talk about here. I imagine most things are probably pretty straightforward, but we can get into some more details on some of the bigger changes here. So Darren, where do you want to start? Do you want to touch on the casemate and fixed gun
Yeah, we
changes?
can quickly go through casemate, and then we'll jump on to the HMGs is a big one, and the medical tents.
Okay.
So yeah, we're allowing players to now see the arcs of at least the majority of casemate units in the game. So your Stug, your Martyr, and all that allow you to better gauge the range that they're able to engage targets at, how wide their cones are, and a little bit of quality of life, especially when these units either use abilities that immobilize themselves to get a better gauge of just how much range can you cover for these vehicles.
Okay. I just saw a question in the chat about whether the Croc or the Grant will also
The
get
Croc
firing
does
cones.
not have it at the moment. The Grant does.
Okay. Okay. Sounds
There
good.
might be a vehicle or two that are missed, but yeah, the Grant should have it as well, considering it is similar in line with like the Stug and Martyr, were the main guns in the hall.
Okay.
The Elephant, yes, the Elephant is also all part of that class.
Okay. What do we want to touch on next here?
Go down.
Yep. So casualty recovery. So this is a big one here. So we're making changes to here. One casualty recovery before is a bit hard to understand. And since it kind of just auto reinforces a guy into one of your squads eventually and gets you manpower back, but also it was just too efficient on like particularly elite infantry. So Rangers, your Stas, all those high manpower costed reinforced units. It was just a little bit too good, so we're just giving you a flat 25 manpower. So you return some of the cost on all infantry units, but not the full, 100% for main lines and all that.
Yeah. This should also make understanding the value of casualty recovery a lot more straightforward. You just get essentially a set chance of casualty every few losses. But before, the value of that loss or the amount of resources you get back would vary very much depending on the squad, like Darren mentioned. Now it's always going to be the same. So.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds like there's some changes to HMGs as well. Do we want to touch on these?
Yep. So for the HMGs, our change was mainly to make them better at area control, but worse at finding targets on their own. So that's why their setup time has been increased slightly, but they now do a little bit more damage at long range to provide that fire support they're meant to do, and also they're getting a buff to their veterancy stats at veterancy 2 to give them more suppression powers, though the veterancy requirements were also just a little bit too low, so we're bringing that up.
Okay, sounds good. What do we want to touch on next here, Jason?
Yeah. Just quick thing about the HMG thing. Like this is one of the push and pulls of the game of like how much like blobbing there is in the game. I know this is a hot topic for people. Essentially, like I think in the past we mentioned that we were going to do something of this nature, and we're going to continue making adjustments to stuff like this. The gentle balance between infantry, HMGs, and the HMG counters is something we're still very much working on. So the rest of this patch also touches on a few things that deal with that. I believe, yeah, light artillery is the right next one.
Yep, so we can just combine light artillery and mortars. So we're just essentially making them scale a bit better, or due to some veterancy requirements and veterancy changes, because they were a little bit too ineffective over the course of the game. Like, these things could still be veterancy 1 by the time everyone else had hit veterancy 2 and 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Easy enough.
And yeah, suppression. This is a big one. This is combined with our HMG change. This is mainly to stop things like, attacking into an HMG with a bunch of grenade launchers and bazookas and trying to kill that key target. So when those units get suppressed with those type of weapons, you'll be much more punished for it by the much higher reload and the much higher scatter.
Yeah. It's a very significant increase. You still might be able to threaten to alpha strike a machine gun if you have a large amount of grenade launchers, for example, but it will no longer be nearly as threatening before. And if you only have like 1 or 2, they'll be much less capable of breaking a machine gun from the front.
Sounds good.
All right.
I guess my blob bazooka teams are not going to have as much luck moving forward here.
All right.
Okay, what do we want to touch on
I
next?
think we can go. We can probably go hit USF. Actually, I think most of these are fairly straightforward changes. So the general overview of USF is they have just a little bit too much tempo in 1v1 in particular. So a lot of their changes are to lowering that advantage that they get. We still want to keep some of the gameplay dynamics of USF, like the bar change. We don't want to lock this behind a support center, because the moment you lock that upgrade behind a support center, you really don't have a timing attack with that weapon upgrade anymore, since vehicles are pretty much going to hit the field right after the bars pop. So we do want there to still be that choice where you can invest into infantry, or you tech up and start going into vehicles.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts here, Jason, on the U.S. forces?
I mean, the big USF change is going to be partisan, so we'll wait until we get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else that we want to cover? with the faction
So
before
I
we get
guess
there?
it covers in advanced logistics. Across the game, we are giving a slight nerf to all the manpower discounts. They're just a little bit too efficient, so we're nerfing these across the board. So not just advanced logistics, but this is also on like reserve infantry, volunteer infantry, war machine. So all those have just gone down a little bit.
Okay. Do we want to touch on bazookas or the bars or anything like that?
So we touched on the BAR.
Yeah.
Or as we touched on, I think that's fair. I guess the Greyhound is also part of that tempo timing. You can see a bunch, like, it's not massive nerfs to the unit, but, it just makes it come out a little bit later because it is effective against all targets at its timing. It's an anti-light unit. And making it a little bit easier to deal with units like the anti-tank. If anti-tank guns have a better chance of just hitting the Greyhound, because before it's a little bit too small.
Okay.
Yeah. One cool change that I'm looking forward to is the paratroopers are now going up to 3 Zooks rather than just having the 2. Ever since we changed the bazooka teams, the paratroopers have kind of fallen off in terms of their AT performance. Back in the day, they used to be just better bazooka teams, and then they were no longer. And we didn't want to just make them essentially a 6-man bazooka team. So instead of giving them that long-range passive and that ability to hold ground, instead we're giving them a lot more punch, but they don't get the extra range. So I'm really excited to see that.
Okay. So you can kind of make the decision to specialize with them
Yeah.
if you want to.
Yeah, and then if you combine this with either of their vet abilities, particularly the, I think it's called Season Hold, they're going to be pretty strong.
It gives them more of an identity. Is their thing compared to like the SSF is the push forward and
Yeah.
use their higher hit point pool and damage to directly engage armor, where SSF will try to ambush and bazooka teams either will try to use numbers or range to deal with armor.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now we're getting into some of the battle group changes. Any points about armored?
Yeah, so Armored is receiving two. Well, it's receiving a few adjustments. So again, the War Machine minor nerf, but the big one is Veteran Crews. CP is going up by one. So this is again a target to kind of that like early tempo strength that USF has. We're trying to reduce how much USF is essentially threatening to kill players in the early 10 minutes in 1v1. So hopefully this alleviates some of that pressure. While also the Scott and the recovery vehicle got some minor buffs. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Spec Ops.
So the big one is the Whiz Bang. We're still always looking at this unit, but the big thing for this unit at the moment is you're not going to be able to call it in without the tank depot. We're noticing that you were able to, especially in 1v1, just stall out the game long enough with infantry and light vehicles that you would eventually get the Whiz Bang, which would counter a lot of the units that would be dedicated to countering both the infantry and the light vehicles, which in the form for Axis is generally team weapons. So we're gonna make it so that you can only get the Whiz Bang by teching up.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. I did see some other player questions about like whether we have plans to lock any other additional units behind tech, or is this something that we kind of do just on a case by case basis?
It's pretty case by case.
Case by case, like the Panther is not as impactful to bring in unless it's fighting under vehicles. Like you can bring in a Panther, but if you bring that in when you're only fighting mass light vehicles and like masses of infantry, that unit doesn't really do anything for your army. Where like the Whiz Bang is pretty much always useful to have in most cases.
Yeah.
Okay. Partisans. I know that they've been feeling very, very dominant, especially in larger team games. So, what have we done with Partisan Battle Group?
Yeah. So partisans have received quite a few changes. Essentially, we've noted that people have gotten much better at using the battle group mechanics very quickly. So we're tuning down a lot of the power the battle group had, particularly around garrisons, but in general. So, for example, the general cooldown of the entire tunnel network has been raised by 10 seconds, which is a very significant cost. And then also, for example, OSS now triggers the tunnel network cooldown. So units, when they retreat, if they use the OSS retreat, they will put the tunnel network on recharge.
Just to confirm, it's not the OSS retreat itself into the tunnel. It's when you're in buildings. It's
Yeah,
it's
the
the
garrison
teleport from
retreat.
Gotcha.
transport from building
Yeah.
back to the network.
Yeah, and then this also affects the standard partisans, right?
Yep. So, because one of the things we notice is if you have multiple partisans in an urban map, there's no way to really threaten to wipe any of them at all. So now you have to be much more intentful of like which partisan unit am I going to pull back, because now that's going to set the entire network on recharge, and that also slows down reinforcements coming back to the fight.
This also means that if you insert a partisan into a garrison via the tunnel network, you will not be able to immediately run away because
Right.
it'll be on cooldown.
Right. So if you're making that decision, you kind of have to commit to it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. What other changes here? Do we want to talk about partisan fighters or OSS
I think
coordination?
they're all fairly straightforward change, just like tuning some of the strength of the partisans ins to be more in line of what you would expect. Like the Molotov was definitely a bit too powerful in terms of its blast radius and cost efficiency, and just just general small changes across the board. No like major overhauls on the abilities outside of that garrison change on the network.
Okay. Sounds good. Anything about underground debt or any of these other abilities?
Yeah. It has a new sound cue, which will be pretty cool.
Okay. Sounds good. And so that will allow the opposing player to sort of clue in that this is about to happen.
And that sound in particular, you'll hear it speed up when it's just about to hit its destination. It's not based on like, oh, am I looking at the flare or the fuse? It's how close how close the fuse is to the target.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Someone just asked if the sound cue is actually just the Mission Impossible theme. Which, hey, if we could have gotten the rights to that would have been great. But
That would have been funny.
okay, Wehrmacht. Any sort of high level thoughts on the Wehrmacht before we get into some of these?
I think mostly it's like the British faction, which is their, I guess, allied counterpart, mainly just tuning changes to the faction, getting some of their stuff better into place. So we're also trying to improve things like Haul Down, which was not really great on a unit like the Stug. So we're also giving this change to Immobilize and Fortify, is we're increasing the cone for all the casemate units, so they're better able to control an area, because it's very hard to obviously use a fixed gun vehicle that's, immobile and doesn't have a turret.
And also the Stug got a buff, a minor one, but a one nonetheless. The point blank blast range was raised by 5, which is actually pretty significant. You'll notice that it'll be much more easy to use the ability, and then we've also added a reticule, so it's easier to see the range.
Okay. Do we want to talk about the Nebel
Nebel
Warfare
Warfare.
and the new ability here?
So,
new ability.
It's a fairly straightforward ability. You're getting HE rockets because the white phosphorus just overlap too much with the incendiary rockets. They're both damage over time rockets, and one of these, well, it does block line of sight to give it that additional use. It wasn't really that different enough from the incendiary rockets to really warrant them. So now you can use the HE rockets on the Nebel Warfare if you really want, like, more initial burst damage, but obviously you're not going to have that area denial or damage over time.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. We increased the range on the Brumbar.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that at all? 'Cause
So
it seems
one,
like
the Brumbar is getting its veterancy rework. Its bonuses weren't particularly great, so you'll see this with the Centaur as well. They're getting much stronger bonuses as an anti-infantry vehicle. And the Brumbar is getting increased range because it's just a little bit too easy to pick the Brumbar apart with, like, especially infantry handheld AT, because the Brumbar has to rotate the face targets. If you're just slightly off, you end up exposing your sides to the enemy, which makes it really hard for the Brumbar to, engage what it's meant to kill, which is infantry, and gives it a little bit more leeway to, roll in, get that shot off, and then back out, considering it's such an expensive unit at the end of the tier for Wehrmacht that it really does need to be a potent unit, or you're just going to go Panzer IVs, which are more versatile.
okay, cool. Any other items here or any units that we want to touch on?
I think for the most part, these are pretty
Maybe
straightforward.
the King Tiger?
Yeah, the King Tiger got a buff. The fuel penalty has been reduced, and the initial manpower cost has also been reduced. So we're hoping to see more of the KTs sit around. A note on this is we've been monitoring how the heavy tank changes have turned out, and so far it doesn't seem like they've changed things too significantly. So we'll be looking at further changes. I think we need a little bit more time to understand why things haven't changed as much as we thought they would. But yeah, we're going to be probably looking at heavy tanks in the future.
And I think that's an important distinction between sort of our major updates and these like sort of minor updates in between, like these 0.5 updates, is we don't want to make changes that rock the boat too much. So if we're doing something that's pretty significant or could have fairly significant knock-ons for the game as a whole, we try and save those for bigger updates
For the
where we
big-
have more time to test them out and experiment and play around with them. Okay, so the Last Stand battle group here.
Just minor things like we mentioned this in Hall Down, give increased art for the casemates because they really need it to function, and a little bit more warning on the Nebel Warfare Overwatch because the flares before would only drop when you were getting targeted, and by that time it's too late for team weapons to start packing up. The Borg word, the big thing that should really help it, at least when you're got the enemy in the center of the reticule, is that all the rockets will now prefer to scatter behind the target, so that means more rockets are just more likely to hit the target if it's in the center of your reticule.
Okay, that sounds great. Let's move on to the British forces.
Good old Brits.
So, any big picture thoughts here?
So the British were just giving them some tuning across the board. There are no major reworks or overhauls for this faction. They're in a fairly decent place. Just making it a little bit easier for their early game, like reducing the cost of the medico tent, making the infantry sections build time on par with everyone else, and making sappers just get veterancy a little bit faster just to help them scale sooner.
Yeah. So yeah, the early game for Brits should be smoothed out a little bit here. both be with the engineers being a little bit better and the infantry sections arriving slightly sooner. I think it should be noticeable that the early game smooths out a little bit. I know we buffed the infantry sections a little less than most of the other main lines, so this should catch them mostly up. But we're going to be keep looking at it.
We did fix an issue with the infantry section's veterancy, so they will now fire a bit faster at later levels, because the veterancy rate of fire wasn't really affecting their bolt-action rifles as effectively as it should have.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, mortar changes. I think that's kind of in line with stuff that we've already covered.
So Black Prince, we can mention, we did give it increased health. The main reason is to be different from the other heavy tanks, mainly the fact that it's so slow on the field. It's kind of notorious for getting taken out by off maps, but we still wanted to keep it as that very slow heavy tank. I think that it should be, so we're just giving it a little bit more health, and the Centaur, like the Brumbar, we're tuning up a bit.
Yeah.
Okay, Jason, any comments here?
So nothing specific for this, but I realize we haven't touched on this. A lot of the emplacements had salvage added to them as an additional bonus. We're going to be looking. I mean, this is part of our efforts to improve especially the smaller emplacements. So the
Anti-air.
anti-air,
The anti-air emplacements, essentially.
and the Bofors one, both of them are receiving some changes. Again, because it's a 0.5 patch, we didn't go fully all out on these, but we're going to be continuing to make adjustments to them.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool.
Anything else here before we get into the Africa Corps?
The Firefly also got a little buff. So this one's to its ability. So to the Sabo range, got raised by 5. This means that it'll be much easier to complete that shell shot as well. And then its rate of fire was ever so slightly increased.
Okay, sounds good. So yeah, the Africa Corps.
Africa Corps got one pretty big change, but and a few minor reductions in kind of the early tempo that it can also do. So kind of alongside USF. So the big one is your half-track deployment. Both the Panzerjäger and the Assault Grenadier now requires you to be in tier 1, 1.5 or 2. So you do need to get one of those upgrades in order to even get access to the call-ins. A note is that you won't be able to see the cooldown, but the cooldown will still exist. So essentially you need to be at that tech level by 6-minute 30 before you can use them. So just be aware.
Oh, I see a comment that says, interesting how partisans made AT rifles get it. No, this was just for all handheld AT, where they were just aiming a little bit too quickly. So we want to keep handheld AT vehicles to have a little bit of room to disengage from handheld AT if they run into it.
Okay,
So,
sounds good.
and for tungsten, yeah, just a slight nerf. It does change the shots to kill against certain types of units. This is to give a little bit more room for Crusaders and like Hellcats, so certain unit health pools, because they're just a little bit too vulnerable to tungsten rounds, but still keeps, tungsten as a powerful endgame upgrade for the anti-vehicle role. And Crad Schützen's getting its reverse back at long last. It's not the same as it used to be, but this is mainly to make it easier to micro, because, you'd have your Crad Schützen trying to provide fire support during a fight. Someone gets a little bit too close, now you have to do like a complete 180 to reface them. If you want to get away, even just a little bit away, if you don't want to rotate on the spot. So this will make the Crad a little bit easier to use, though it won't be, blazing fast in reverse.
Yeah. Can't believe you played with my heart this much. You took away my reverse and you gave it back. I'm sure some folks will be happy to see that back, even though it has been changed quite a bit. Okay. Anything else in terms of some of the unit changes here?
Kind of in aggregate. Panzergrens got a slight buff. And then also both the 2509 and the mortar half-tracks received very slight buffs. These are all to help even out a little bit the strength of some of the strats that are a tad weak right now. For example, there are still 1 or 2 armory upgrades that are a little under par that we're going to be continuing to look at. I don't think we wanted to do anything for 0.5, but more things on the horizon on there.
Okay. Do we want to talk about the elephant?
Yeah. I think someone noted, did the elephant get buffed? So.
Yes, yeah. So it's mainly just to its vet. One is increasing the speed bonus and allowing you to use the engine burnout without always crippling yourself on if you're able to keep yourself above a certain hit point pool. So you could actually, use this to travel to the front line rather than you always have the risk of just breaking your engine.
Yeah. We're toning it back a little bit. Maybe the vehicle can drive a little bit without setting itself on fire. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And so armored support, getting a bunch of changes there. For particularly in Panzerstorm, it felt, didn't really feel great as a player who, you place mines in advance to, stall enemy advances and attacks into your territory, but to have like an ability that just completely shuts off mines which already have counters in the form of sweepers getting accidentally detonated by, stray tank shells. Oh, so we didn't really want the Panzerstorm to be able to completely shut off, like defensive mines in that sort of way. So we are changing this ability to now only prevent things like crew shot criticals. So you'll still be vulnerable to engine damage if you're taking too many hits into as you're pushing into enemy lines. But we are making the ability cheaper because it is only a speed boost and not like a pure combat buff. We are also pushing back like salvage because it would come in a bit too early due to its current power. We are looking at salvage, but for now we're just going to push back the rapid salvage just because it has so much value with this battle group, which synergizes very well with vehicles.
Okay.
And the superior fire drills, is getting a major decrease to its power because we brought up all the tank machine guns in prior patches, but we've kept this in a pretty powerful state. This is like an early pick as well. Oh, so it can't really have the power it currently has.
Okay, perfect. Do we want to touch on some of the changes to Kriegsmarine?
Kriegsmarine received a few minor buffs. We noticed that supply reserves is still kind of not seeing as much use as we want. So it's now getting a whole 25% increase in value. It's now 4 crates instead of 3. And then also the recharge is slower. And then also a few minor munition cost adjustments to the other two abilities.
Okay, cool. So that's kind of the end of the rundown of sort of the balance changes. We can get into some of the bug fixes here in a sec, at least, some of the ones that affect multiplayer. But any sort of final thoughts on, like, again, what you're trying to accomplish with the 225 update? I know it's a lot of, like, tidying things up after the major update in the winter. So any other sort of guidance or thoughts for us in terms of like what you're expecting to see from players in the coming days?
I mean, like I mentioned at the start there, again, our two main goals for 0.5 patches is cleanup of some of the major issues on a patch. So again, one of the big ones was the tempo advantage that USF had in 1v1, but also to a lesser extent DAC as well. There are a lot of little changes targeted towards minor, or not minor, but like specific issues throughout 2.2, sorry. And then also we have added a few things where like a few things got buffed, hopefully to see a little bit more use. So,
okay, sounds good. A couple bug fixes here that we can maybe touch on. Goliath, you can now hear it when it's turning and rotating.
yes.
I imagine that's a nice quality of life change. Error code 13, we were seeing this one a lot when people were trying to buy certain cosmetic sets, so that should be resolved or should give you a better message if there's an issue there.
Just mainly nice cleanups on certain things.
Yeah, the 17 powder, I think, its veterancy was wrong.
Right.
It's now set to the correct value, which is kind of a nerf to its performance, but it's also been doing very well. So, an adjustment that was needed.
Okay, sounds good. Anything else in the notes that you want to touch on here?
No, I guess we can go straight to questions.
Oh,
we lost Twitch chat.
All right. So if you folks do have some questions, please throw them in the chat and we'll try and answer them. I do have a collection of questions that we got over the last week when we announced the live stream, so I'll try and pull out a few of those from our social channels and throw those to Darren and Jason here. One question I did see was, I think we maybe mentioned the espionage battle group previously.
Yes.
About like wanting to take a look at it.
Yes.
So what are the plans for that right now?
Yeah, so espionage has been on the docket for a extended period of time, this battle group has been a bit of a difficult one to work with. And kind of the issue is with point 5 is that we can't really do massive, like, splashy changes because we don't really have a good window to then adjust them afterwards. So we wanted to do changes to espionage, but unfortunately they couldn't get in because I think at one point we were considering a few changes that were more minor, like some more tunables and stuff like that. But on further work on them, like a lot of these wouldn't really move the needle on a lot of these things. So we're just reserving them for the future.
Okay. I'm just going to pull out a couple questions here really quick. Gunther, you were talking about a bug with streaming via Discord. This is the first time hearing about it. So if that's in fact occurring, be sure to log that at our help portal, help.relic.com, so that we can get it properly logged and have someone to take a look at that. You can't run away from this question. Why do Grenadiers cost 261 manpower?
It's a very. I think it's to do. They're 260. They're like 260 point something. It's due to how you have to set up the entities in the files, and we don't want to do the weird thing where on the spawner itself, like the infantry company, where we just put -1 manpower, because Grenadiers have some very weird rounding if you want to get 25 manpower on a 6-man squad for 260 manpower. It's just...
Is it because of the casualty changes that number changed?
Wait, no, the cost shouldn't change, but people that mainly notice, like, if you are going frame by frame, when the mortar becomes available, you need to wait like 1 to 2 more frames before the Grenadier is available due to how some weird roundings working in the background.
Fun note, that's not the only squad that has technically like a point something cost, so that's for you guys to find them all out, but yes.
Yes. There's a question here about buggy projectile arcs for artillery. I believe there was a change in this patch, right? Some of the weapons with arcs, so that they would not be like as ineffective.
I think they're meaning the 90-degree moonshot that are...
Yeah, that one's more of a quirk of how our projectile system works. It very much depends on which issue he's referring to. Some weapons got switched from their low arc to high arc, which could be might be something they're touching on, but there are some weird quirks to how our projectile system work. One of the things that works in our game that is different in previous titles is we generally make sure that you will always go to hit your target. Whereas if you think in Code 2, for example, a common case is if you were too close to a tree and you fired your Stuka, for example, all your Stuka rockets would go into the tree or into the building. We generally prevent that, though the game has to do some weird things to kind of achieve that. So it's kind of a trade-off.
Okay, sounds good. A couple questions that we grabbed previously. Care Cup on Discord was asking, is the team happy with how the changes to call-ins have panned out? Are there plans for more units to become only buildable via tech? I kind of asked this earlier, but just wanted to get some more thoughts on this.
Yeah. I mean, it's very much case by case. I think we've kind of moved quite a distance on some of the stuff. Like, for example, the heavy tank change was an experimental mid-ground, and again, I don't think that one has been as successful as an example. But some changes from units from call-in to their production forms have also struggled as well. I think the Centaur is a good example, where after it stopped being a call-in, it kind of struggled. Which has, like, there are pros and cons to this kind of stuff. So, again, it's case by case.
Okay. Burn for Me, please, also asks, upon releasing Battlegroup DLC, where does the team like to see new battlegroups end up in the meta or the pick rates after a period of settling down? Are there any battlegroups that the team wants to elevate based on low pick rates, performance, or identity?
I mean, I don't think we have any hard metric goals that we usually use. And also, depending on certain battle groups, we expect different kinds of pick rates. So some battle groups will be more niche just inherently than others. So we're kind of okay with that. But there are going to be battle groups that are overrepresented or underrepresented. Usually we can kind of tell when a battle group is being picked because it's very good versus just like its more natural state. because we can see kind of like the pick rates fluctuate of different things, and usually when something's very good over time, everyone kind of piles onto that thing, and then its pick rate kind of increases over time, and we can see that. And we can also see win rates for battle groups as well. We usually want to maintain a pretty even win rate across all battle groups. We don't really like the idea of like a certain battle group is just the best for a faction for very obvious reasons. So yeah, we kind of monitor that. I don't think I have any hard metrics I can kind of throw your way. Like we've had some ones that were very popular for a very extended period of time. And even then, like I think the most popular this patch was what, like 27% for like 2 weeks or something. Which is still pretty high considering now each battle group has more than 4 battle groups. So
Yeah. Some related question. Grenade spam wins was asking, what factors do you consider or take into consideration for if a battle group needs a rework or not?
there's a bit of a push and pull here. But usually what determines the difference between tuning and overhaul is generally our read on how toxic or oppressive the battle group is. So basically in both cases, if the battle group's really good, how does it feel to play against it? And in reverse, if the battle group's very weak, how does it feel to play as it? Because there's generally a difference between things that are strong and things that feel good. Usually they come together hand in hand, but there's usually a difference, right? Some battle groups, when they're really good or like when they're properly strong, have negative effects on the game. So like there are certain abilities or certain, for example, Collins, I think is a good example where like when certain things by their design cause issues that we don't like. So in those cases, those usually receive design changes. And that's, for example, a lot of the unit uniqueness stuff. That's a good example of it where like we could have just tuned the numbers up for it to feel better, but they would have caused huge problems, right? Imagine if like a unit could sprint at like double speed or something. It would be better, right? But it would suck to play against. So that's kind of the balance we kind of aim at. Anything you want to add to that, Darren?
I think for battle groups, there's also going to be battle groups that some are just naturally being harder to play, are not going to be, as prominently picked in comparison. So, like, Parsons can be very good, but because it is a harder battle group to play, it generally gets it's naturally just going to get a smaller share of the play, like total play time. I'm in our data.
Okay. Somewhat related to, actually related to battle groups. How does the design of zero command point units or abilities, such as the Weasel or any sort of call in infantry, influence the rest of a battle group or even the faction?
That's a cool question.
I think it's changed. If like for our later battle groups, like zero CP infantry tends to be a bit more like a key component of that battle group because they will rely on other abilities or functions of that battle group, like coastals or builders. The Kriegsmarine are going to set up your hard points. So those units tend to be a bit more integrated with their battle groups, where more of the early battle groups, they're more like, they're toolbox battle groups. So you can bring in that unit to assist you in some way, but they're not like a key component to like unlock all the battle group's skills or abilities.
Yeah. Like a key definer of CP0 is whether or not we want the battle group to change your early game plan. So even like technically this isn't a unit, but for example, the MP40 package for the Wehrmacht is a good example. We wanted that to create or to give you an option to be more aggressive with grenadiers in the early game. So that's an example. Other times is when we want the battle group to really focus on, for example, the Australians wouldn't feel very Australian if you only had 1 or 2 squads. Like very late into the game, so we wanted to give you the option to start playing with them immediately, and give you that option. A more controversial example is probably like Pathfinders. We wanted the Airborne Battle Group to offer you the option to essentially play a little bit more like that early recon force to then later have Hairdroppers join them. There's also sometimes when we use CP0 units to break up how normally the attacking of a battle group or of a faction goes. So I think Pathfinders are another example where they enable WSC play by giving you kind of a stopgap infantry unit, making going WSC more viable and stuff like that. So there's a few different reasons for CP0 stuff.
I'm going to bring up the question that we have to answer every live stream,
Okay.
which is about
Which one?
the U.S. forces and non-doctrinal artillery or
Oh,
non-battle group artillery.
non-doctrinal artillery.
So I know this is something that a lot of more
Mm-hmm.
competitively minded players bring up frequently because it seems like the U.S. doesn't necessarily have access to a tool that a lot of the other factions do.
Mm-hmm.
From the internal discussions that I know we've had, I feel like faction identity and asymmetry is pretty important. So is it safe to say that the U.S. forces probably won't ever get like a artillery in their base roster?
That's a scary question to answer on a live stream, John. But so yeah, our it's funny because like even internally, I don't think we're fully solid on this. My thoughts on this are essentially that it is important that all factions essentially have gaps, either for battle groups or in general for both asymmetry and for meaningful like differences in playstyle and also like your strengths. We can't really make a faction really particularly strong in one area without making them weak in another area, or else they're just always strong.
And I imagine you want the player to be making like meaningful and interesting decisions
Yep.
throughout the match as well, right?
Yeah. And like Code 3 is definitely not designed in a way where we expect you to use battle groups to be successful. This is not less so. Like I think in the previous games the doctrines mattered a little bit less, but very much we expect that the battle groups are a core piece of your strategy. So the idea that you are more dependent on battle groups for certain things is not seen as that much of a negative. There are weaknesses to that and costs to that we acknowledge, but generally the idea is that your game plan or your strategy should be augmented or based like the battle group is assumed that you have one. Now some battle groups just don't give you artillery. USF has a few of these, but we usually give you things to offset that. One thing that's particularly hurting USF right now is also that their ASC is quite weak, particularly in team games once AA comes online. That's also meant to offset a lot of their weaknesses in destroying concentrated defenses, which is something we've been trying to look at, but this one's been more difficult to solve. So,
Okay, sounds good. Next up here, blobs. My favorite other question is about
Yes.
massed
Oh, boy.
infantry.
it's a spicy live stream.
TTV Flex asks, are there any plans to add something like red cover or potentially rework artillery or time to kill? It doesn't feel like blobbing gets punished in the same way in Company of Heroes 3 like it did in Company of Heroes 2.
So we'll need to break this down into multiple. So like for the red cover question, one, that won't always break up blobbing because that's just incredibly situational, and it's also hard to gauge what's exactly is red cover because in Company of Heroes 2 and 1, it's just like if you just certain roads were red cover, but other roads were not red cover. And then if you start making things like rivers red cover, you get the crossing in the woods of old where you can just never cross over into the other side of the woods. As for artillery, the reason why we do put out things like damage caps on certain units, it's not for it to be to punish them against blobs. We don't want artillery to just fire into the fog of war and immediately wipe out a single squad, because the moment that these units can, let's say they will wipe out a blob, yeah, they can wipe out a blob. They will also just wipe out standard infantry units just running around the battlefield. Like, let's say you have like a rifle squad capping off far. One stray artillery shell hits them in prior coals, that entire squad's just gone. And they're not even blobbed up. They're just doing their job capping. So we don't want that sort of gameplay where you just immediately lose a squad. So our artillery's more pushed into like bleeding squads over time, causing a lot of health damage, forcing away that entire force, rather than just immediately eliminating individual units.
I mean, it's going to be a continued push and pull. I think blobbing has always been a thing for the entire lifespan of the game. We've noticed that in the past, when we've deployed certain measures that punish blobbing, generally just means it punishes infantry play in general, and people have chafed against it. So there have been times where the machine guns were just too good. I think some remember when machine guns could very reliably pin enemy infantry in essentially one burst, very reliably, and that was not fun to play with or against. There are other examples where, like, for example, artillery was just extremely effective at breaking up infantry at all times. And that also caused issues because if you can't use infantry, then the whole game kind of breaks down in a lot of different ways. And it's also just not fun to lose infantry to things you cannot see as well. So there's always gonna be push and pull here.
Okay, sounds good.
And we have been steadily like making the HMGs better against like holding against large masses of units, but we still want you to have like, additional units supporting that HMG. Like once the HMG gets its suppression off, then you follow up with a bunch of other things.
Okay. Another question, a couple questions from our YouTube channel. I'm not even going to try and pronounce this username. Any plans to buff the STG Stoss?
This is always the hard one.
Yes.
It's a design question
Yes, but TBD.
Has haunted us for ages.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So stay tuned. Max Muster also asks, what is the most bonkers or short-lived balance change that you have ever tested internally?
There's a
And I
lot.
imagine the stipulation is like something so wild that we never shipped it because it was too. far
Yeah,
out there.
I mean, there's a lot. I'm trying to think of like a good example. I mean, there's like a bunch of things where like, oh, this might be a good idea, and then it just like died instantly. Oh, I wanted to do the commandos at 1 CP at one point. Remember that?
Yeah, you could get them before anyone had to even tier
Yeah.
their next tier up, so they would just overrun everyone on the field.
Yeah, I think when we were originally experimenting with the double commandos for Air and Sea, right, we wanted you to be able to go more into like a more general commando force. Those who remember Code 2, you had the ability to build I think it's the Vanguard glider that would summon the commandos and could build more of them. We wanted to make that more organic to the game. But 1 CP commandos, either we had to completely gimp the unit, which made them not feel like commandos, or it was just way too strong. I mean, like as reference, generally maybe half, maybe slightly less or slightly more than half the changes we want to do actually end up going into a patch. It kind of varies with major and minor patches and depending on what you consider like a change. But generally, like a lot of changes go through that of like sometimes they get shut down very quickly in ideation. Some make it to prototype and then die instantly. Some make it all the way up until like 2 weeks before and then they die then. Like I think both this patch and the last patch has had a few changes where we're like, yeah, we just can't do this either in 0.5 or on chip, stuff like that. So.
Okay. Darren, anything else springing to mind?
I feel like I should. Well, I guess I can bring one up right now that we had, which was we had 5-man sappers at Vet 2, but
Oh yeah.
the moment you would get any good engagement with that, from what our playtesters found, you would have 5-man sappers, which is a very strong unit because you go from a unit that does okay at CQC to it's a 5-man full-on combat squad now.
Yeah, that died pretty late too, right? Like,
Yeah,
was only a few weeks ago.
that died very late.
Yeah.
Okay. So an interesting question from Bobber in the chat. They're asking if are we considering adding additional battle group loadout slots for each player, considering we keep adding more battle groups, or will it always remain at a choice of 3?
Yeah. So right now, I think the answer will be no, because even though there's more battle groups, we want you to make a lot of that heavy decision making of like what my strategies will be in the loadout phase. I don't think we want to overcomplicate in tactical, like you're already playing the game, and then you're like, I need to consider between 4 battle groups. If anything, we want the battle groups to represent more general game plans as well. Some of our battle groups have been pretty one note, and we've tried, especially with the newer battle groups, for them to support more different kinds of strategies, or at least more game plans for a certain strategy. So generally, I don't think we want to overly complicate that decision.
Okay, sounds good. I did see a couple questions about like what's coming next. What do we have planned for the next few months? So I think I can maybe answer some of those. So our next update, 2.3, is tentatively scheduled for the end of March, start of April. I think on the roadmap we said end of March. So you can stay tuned for that. I believe we're going to have some new cosmetic sets, some additional balance changes. Question mark? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're hoping
Of course.
so.
Always, right? Along with some other fun stuff. And then the new battle groups currently are scheduled for the summer, which is exciting. I know the team is really hard at work on those, and we'll obviously have more to say about that closer to when those are going to be coming out. What else do we? Any other good questions here in the
A lot
chat?
of questions. I don't know how like some of the streamers can just like instantly read questions super fast on the stream. There's so many.
How does the design team feel about more buffs in the
Ah,
form of the Chaffee's recon mode upgrade required to gain new capability?
Is it more buffs to giving on the Chaffee? Like, make it even stronger with recon mode? I don't think we want to make the Chaffee a be-all, end-all unit. Like, the recon on the vehicle is already very strong because it is more situational than the Greyhound, and that's never going to change between the Chaffee and the Greyhound. Chaffee is an anti-vehicle unit. You won't always get the unit.
so
So,
yeah, no, but I think they mean in the form of the Chaffee buff. So we buffed it
giving it recon.
by giving it extra capability. These are kind of hard to do. The Chaffee one actually took quite a long time. I think Darren, you have to push for it for a long period of time because it's kind of a balance. We don't want like units are generally more interesting the more stuff they can do, but also the decisions on those unit matter less. And also when a unit can do more functions, it's hard for us to immediately know whether or not it's like being more interesting at the cost of other units. Now, I think the Chaffee is a good example of finding that perfect middle ground, whereas sometimes you don't want units to do everything. So it's finding the right cost for that. So, I mean, if we can get more changes that ended up like that, I think we would, but like it's always going to be difficult. Like we're going to be doing more UU changes, so unit uniqueness changes, and hopefully we want more of them to land like that. But yeah, I guess the desire is to, but it's going to be it's slow going.
Okay. Bish Bash in the chat also asks if we have any plans for additional content for this year. I don't think we can say too much about that right now. However, if you take a look at our most recent sort of roadmap teaser, I think there's a couple little Easter eggs or teasers on that roadmap that'll clue you into some of our plans. So more news to come. I just don't want to say anything just yet because plans are always shifting and changing as we go through the development process.
A lot of shifting.
But what I can say is, it's the 20th anniversary of Company of Heroes, so we're hoping for this to be a good year for the game. Okay, what else? What else? Are we continuing sound updates? Yes, that work is probably a little bit further out.
I mean, this patch had some.
Yeah.
Depends on what scale you're referring to. Obviously, the bigger ones will come later, but like for example, the Goliath got changed, and also the Underground Detonation got changed. Our illustrious sound team.
But yeah, it's like just depends on what workload they have because there's other things in the background that they have to work on.
Co-op or single player changes. I was actually just talking to both of you about this before we went live, but I think we may try to take some of the changes in multiplayer and bring them over to single player at some point.
Like
this
not
year.
all of them. It's not like we're not going to bring over TTK and the like, but like
Yeah.
some of the unit mechanic changes we would probably want to try and bring over. Is always a risk, like making sure that one lands correctly because you never know which mission. Like adding something will you suddenly break a mission.
Yeah, there's a lot of missions in our game, and also it works in the way the missions work are also kind of it's hard to explain, but essentially there are issues that they can cause, but we want to.
Doverin in the chat asks, will we ever get a facelift for the menus? Maybe.
Perhaps.
Maybe. Okay, what else do we have here? Stronger M8s. I don't know about that one.
It's interesting. Everyone keeps saying buff the M8 Scott, and we just actually buffed it. One of the things we actually noticed, we had a stronger version of the M8 in 2.2.5. That was not fun to play against.
No.
Because I don't know if people realize that we did buff the M8's range to 90. Like, yes, it's not as powerful as the other artillery units, but sort of like the whiz bang, it's one of the harder ones to take down because it has the increased health pool. It has pretty good speed and mobility, and it has a turret on it as well. Like, it's not really good in a direct fight, but it will be able to chip you out over time, and it became very difficult for, like, Wehrmacht to play against because their main thing to deal with a lot of vehicles is anti-tank guns, and Scots are not, like, that expensive as a unit.
What's your favorite voice line in the game? Very important question.
Weasel by. Finish the line. It is a very important balance consideration. I'm sure Will has much to speak about that.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite ones actually hasn't been released yet. I was just looking at the script for it, and I was like, that's very amusing.
Yeah. Will's cooking.
Maybe less voice lines, but I think my favorite, at least voice actor, is the Wehrmacht Panzer Grenadier, so that's
Oh,
mine.
yeah? Oh.
Yeah, no, sorry, I'm just kind of like scrolling through the chat.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're all looking,
Yeah.
we're reading through chat together here.
Reading through the ancient chat.
Yeah, I mean, it's ancient by streamer standards of like, it's literally been a minute, but you know.
Plans for turret-based light medium tanks for Wehrmacht. Not entirely sure what that means.
For new units?
New units, like maybe in a far future battle group, but probably never in the core of the army. We generally don't add new units to the core.
Oh, here's a fun one. Maybe we can end on this, or maybe we'll do a couple more. What games are you currently playing, and do they influence your ideas for Co 3?
I mean, I've been playing a few games. I mean, there's quite a few RTS games that have come out recently. I haven't played all of them, but last year was a good year for RTS. A few of them do generate a lot of inspiration. I think those who have played CNC Generals probably have seen some inspirations for the partisan battle group in that one. So yeah, we draw from different things. I mean, I think we both quite like CNC 3.
Trying
Correct
to conquer
number.
this in general from like
Not the unspoken one, but you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, stuff like that.
Another question here. Did you notice Tightrope's idea to double CP costs?
This
So
one.
yeah, that was noticed. I think we might have talked about it like in ancient times, like, oh, maybe commandos need to be like 1.5 because we can't get them at 2.
Yes.
But it would require a bunch of time to rework all the timings of everything because that's everything that gets changed in the game to accommodate that change. I think everyone will remember when that happened in Code 2, like they had to do a bunch of changes afterwards when they made that half CP change because you were now having units have like considerably different timing. So it's something that I saw in the video, but it would be something that would take a lot of work to implement if we went down that road.
It's one of those things where it's like, oh, that would be really cool to do if it wasn't so much work to do. Because you would have to figure out, I mean, we could just double it, like they mentioned, but then finding the new 0.5 timings, we would have to relearn how they would work, because just because you get something 30 seconds or a minute sooner doesn't mean they're just that much stronger. Usually the impact of these things can be very like feast or famine, in the sense of like, that made no difference, or that made all of the difference. There were a few things in the past where like, simply because you could get this before other people could get Y, this thing became super strong. Again, none of this is impossible, so I think it is a good idea. But it's more just like the amount of work to properly execute on that throughout the entirety of the game would be difficult. Now, with all of that said, though, I don't want to say like, oh, like this kind of stuff we just won't do, because we do know large systems like the CP system could be better. Like we've already done something as crazy as like, let's change the vent for the entire game, or the TTK of the entire game. But like right now, I don't think there's a huge push to do something like that just yet.
Okay, sounds good. Well, we are at time here, so I think we'll probably end things there. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today to go through today's 225 balance tuning update. And of course, thank you to Jason and Darren for all your work here and for walking us through your thoughts and your deep feelings about faction balance and battle group balance. So I think we'll leave things there. Everyone, thank you for all the questions. If we didn't get to it, apologies. Save those for next time, or please reach out to us on our Discord. Again, if you're playing the game and encountering issues, go to help.relic.com. Make sure you log those so that we can get those work items over to the team, and they can start improving things for update 2.3, which is going to be coming out in at the end of March. So, sorry, we're targeting the end of March. Always have to stipulate we're targeting the end of March. Thanks everyone, and again, thank you, Jason. Thank you, Darren, and we will see you guys next time.
Great.
Bye, guys.
See ya.